Okay. Hi, I'm Sayan. I'm a student of electrical engineering here. So one thing is there's no doubt in our minds that socialism played a big role in drafting of our constitution. And so what I want to ask is that according to you, is reservation inherently a socialist concept, and has reservation worked? And what is this way forward for meritocracy in India?
Why did you start with the premise that socialism played a role in the drafting of the constitution? What is your basis for saying that?
In my mind, in fact, it was written in many places, non directly, but again, in the preamble, it was also added in.
It was added later. But yeah, where did it feature in the drafting of the constitution?
From what I've been going through, it just seems like we want more of a equality in that sense. So
socialism has got nothing to do with equality. Forget it, please.
I mean, in the sense.
Full respect to the sentiment of your question, but factually and logically, you're not correct. Allow me to correct you there. To the best of my knowledge, people weren't discussing socialist principles beyond the point when they were drafting the constitution. That wasn't happening. Please remember that. Okay. They were certainly speaking of trying to make the society more egalitarian. I agree.
Yeah, that's what I meant by that.
I'm saying don't give credit to socialism for that. इसको उस खाते में डालने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है. Okay. You don't need to attribute all discussions on equality to socialism, because its history is very checkered and mixed. This is exactly what I'm trying to counter and combat. Find indigenous reasons for these decisions in history, at least through facts. I'm not saying create, I'm not saying invent. But why is the mind naturally gravitating towards socialism the moment there is a discussion of equality? As if before that nobody thought of equality. That's one. Second, I'll come to the heart of your question, which is on reservations. I've taken a very calibrated position over the years thanks to greater reading, and I've taken the very clear position that at this point it has become a question of muscle and the number of people you're able to marshal to create trouble on the streets. Which is why it has required the Supreme Court to step into the picture and say, you cannot go about doling reservations without satisfying these basic criteria. At the very least, do some kind of baseline studies to verify social status, political representation, representation of the bureaucracy, and then come to the conclusion that they are truly disenfranchised. My problem is that people who were meant to be original beneficiaries of it are now having to share space with everyone who is even a landowning community, with significant amount of muscle at their disposal. And therefore you have pushed people into coming out with an EWS to generalize it. If you are able to responsibly approach this issue, you can hope to have a saner conversation on the question of creamy layer, which is less volatile, which is less, let's say, fraught with rhetoric or caste-based slurs hurled at each other. So my hope, and the larger hope is, I've said this before, and I hope this doesn't communalize the discussion, but it has already become, so what. The point is, I've said that the temple ecosystem must perhaps step into the picture to try and address those communities which are meant to be the beneficiaries of the reservation and take charge of their education. Spend money there. Take away the need for a sense of entitlement and create a different mindset altogether. You will not be able to dislodge reservation as long as you have alternatives for it. The alternative for reservation can only be increase it to such an extent that it becomes meaningless. And let it be a revolving door. Is saal aapka, us saal mera, ye, like beggars actually distributing seats between themselves, do this. Keep doing it. But in the process, people who are supposed to get it, who are at the bottommost rung of the ladder, what happens to them? Surprisingly, all the so-called people who speak on their behalf and who are not from that particular community are the ones who are also fighting for OBC reservations. Now, who is being Brahminical? The ones who are not Brahmins and who are actually getting the reservations. How do you handle this discussion? Maybe at some stage, with the temple ecosystem stepping into the picture to take certain societal obligations upon itself, you will try and create a mentality of giving up what you have. To say, I have had it, I have benefited from it, I am done with it. Some examples and hopefully heartening examples are emerging from this state. Of all the places, this state with its 69% reservation, which is good. They've come out with that position. The most politically incorrect answer that I can give is that the emergence of Dalit Hindu voices will lead to greater movement for self-respect within the Hindu fold and gradually taper off the need for reservations and the feeling that they are marginalized. That needs to be addressed. So it's not purely an economics answer, it's not purely an employment-based answer. It has a clear societal relationship to it. I am not trying to say this is the solution. I am just being a leftist here saying it's a multivariable equation.